Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us today. Welcome to Mission 2020 Fundraising, Outcome Unknown. Our speakers today are Aishah Hyman, Director of Individual Giving, Public Broadcasting Atlanta, and Emily Pelton, the Vice President of Development at Public Broadcasting Atlanta. And then we have Ali Bacaj, Interactive Fundraising Producer at KPBS in San Diego. A few housekeeping things before we get started. You're all muted, but we invite you to ask questions throughout the presentation and we will answer those at the end. The session is being recorded and we will provide the recording to you after the summit. And with that, let's get started. So Ali, I'd love to hear from you. We would love to see your presentation and have you talk with us for a few minutes. So Ali, if you are ready.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, great. I'll let you have the floor and see you soon.
Okay, so today I'm Ali Bacaj from KPBS, and what I'm going to talk to you today about is a project that we developed through ASU's Table Stakes program. My time is limited, so I'm not going to get too into the weeds about the program. I put some info up on the slides here, but essentially what we did is we assembled a cross-functional team from membership, communications, digital, outreach, and news to develop a central performance challenge. We didn't go in with a specific project in mind, but when we were there, we did a pretty comprehensive assessment of KPBS and how we're performing digitally. And we had some very honest conversations with each other. So when it came time to develop our project, we asked ourselves, what is our biggest digital problem? And we really decided that that issue was loyalty. We had what one of our coaches calls a classic mid-funnel problem. A lot of one-time or infrequent users and a lot of committed members, but not a lot going on in the middle. And we just weren't doing a good job of cultivating our digital users into loyalists. So we came up with this central challenge statement that we used as our North Star for the many, many outcomes and activities that were to come. KPBS will convert digital acquaintances into family. And we wanted to cultivate our casual users to deepen their engagement as members, of course, but we also wanted to consider non-monetary ways that people contribute and become loyalists as well. So these are the areas that we focused on. Newsletter subscribers, website user retention, growing the users on our KPBS mobile app, increasing OTT users on the PBS video app. We did an experiment with micro donations, and we wanted to shift KPBS's internal culture. And the deadline for all of these was to be completed by August 2020. Because my time's limited, I'm only today going to focus on subscribers, OTT users, and micro donations. So starting with newsletters, we had 5 of them, but they were mostly automated. They just scraped content off of our website, and we never did anything with them. And we never, ever, ever promoted them. It's a miracle we had any subscribers. The sign-up form is just about impossible to find on the website. It was hidden in this tiny little link in our footer. So we had about 3,000 subscribers. We wanted to triple that number. But we blew way past that goal. By August, we'd racked up 48,000 subscribers, and we've added another 5,000 or so since then. And the way that we did that was we relaunched one of our existing newsletters, KPBS Arts, with a new writer. And we created 2 new newsletters during the pandemic. One called Home Club that I write for streaming video recommendations, and a midweek news roundup called The Catch Up. And the difference with all of these is that they are very personality driven. There's a voice behind them, and it's more of a personal touch point than our more automated newsletters. We also did a lot of work on list building, really digging into our interest data and accumulating things through engagement data, looking at how people reacted to some of our one-off email blasts about certain topics to gauge interest and start opting people in. We also collected subscribers through our voter guide, which we did for the primary and the general election. And we created new sign-up widgets all throughout the website. You can't get to a single website page on our site without running into one of our sign-up forms. And we tested pop-ups and sticky bars. So what I want to show you here is the impact. What this chart shows you is that before we started this project, 88% of our email subscribers only ever received membership emails, and they only ever heard from us when we were asking for money. And they were tuning us out, and I don't blame them. As you can see, our open and click-through rates were really suffering as a result across the board. And so now more than half of the people that we regularly email are receiving at least one email from us per week. And our open and click-through rates are way up across the board, which amplifies the effectiveness of all of our efforts. So newsletters, big success, but here's one of our efforts that was a little less so. We did an experiment with micro donations. The idea was to cultivate our casual users who like our news coverage and want to support us, but aren't committed enough for a $60 membership, with small gifts that we called tips. We put this little widget on news stories on our website encouraging tips. Our goal was to raise $5,000. We didn't do that. It was an experiment using the tools that we had available, but the design was too subtle and it didn't really catch on. You can see in the top corner of this, it's that little animated widget that says, like this story, leave a tip. The design was too subtle. It didn't really catch on. So this iteration didn't work, but that's okay. We wanted to fail fast and move on. So that's what we're doing. We're going to be kind of taking the seeds of this idea and moving on to a different iteration. Using pocket-ups and sticky bars with customized asks and calls to action that are based on loyalty, individual users' website visit frequency. So we'll kind of be developing some campaigns and user journeys around that. And now I'm going to talk about PBS video. So obviously our ultimate goal with streaming video is to get more Passport donors, but our strategy of pushing Passport wasn't really working. People didn't understand what it was or how to watch the videos. So we really took a step back and took a more funnel-based approach and put the brakes on our Passport first promotions and instead put our energies toward getting people to download and use the PBS video app on OTT and to watch videos. So we started in September 2019, and I do want to clarify, we were strictly looking at OTT users, people watching on the Roku or Apple TV or Fire TV. We were not counting users who stream via mobile apps or via the website. You know, OTT is kind of the optimal viewing experience, and that's what we want to encourage people to do. So we started out with 13,500 OTT users in September 2019. Our goal was to reach 20,000 by August. You know, when we measured in August, ironically, it was kind of a low point for us. We had hit 20,000 users for the first time in April, and now we're currently averaging that right now. So we did meet our goal, just like not the specific month that we measured it, but we are enjoying the rebound right now. And of course, what I'm sure you all want to know about is revenue. So yes, our revenue from Passport went up 156% year over year, and things have really snowballed since then. You know, we made almost half of what we made in that first time frame. Just in January alone, we made like 52,000 just through our Passport donation form. So things have been going great on that front. And here's some of the tactics that we took. Again, taking that app first promotional strategy. We created a new cross-departmental Passport users group at KPBS with people from programming, membership, communications, and digital all getting together as, you know, our streaming video brain trust. And we're getting more data-driven. We were not before, but we're really digging into the data. And I write a weekly newsletter that every single week promotes our streaming video content. And that's it for today. Here's an artistic rendering of our table stakes team and our coach, Joanne. If you have any questions, I will be happy to talk more in the Q&A.
Thanks so much, Allie. That was excellent. As Allie said, we are going to ask her questions in the Q&A after the entire presentation. So hang on till the end, but feel free to chat the questions to us. And now I want to turn it over to my friends at Atlanta. So let's have Emily and Aishah come on up, and we'll talk to them about their wonderful 2020 experiments. Hi, Aishah. Hi, Emily. Thanks so much. So I'm going to give you the floor for your time. Tell us more about your project, and I'll see you in a few minutes.
Thank you so much, Christina. So I'm going to start out by talking about our spring radio pledge drive. So just to set the stage just a little bit about our radio drive in the spring, we had the good fortune of having Jay Clayton come to our station and do kind of a reset with our entire organization around how we do our radio pledge drives. And when I say entire organization, I mean the CEO, the engineering department, everyone from different aspects of the radio department, all of our TV folks, the entire development staff, everyone, HR, everyone participated in a full day workshop with Jay Clayton to really unpack the methodology and best practices around radio on-air fundraising. And that really was a game changer for us because it changed the culture of how we do fundraising at the station. Everyone knew that they could play a part and they had a stake in the success of our drives, and they knew exactly what they could do to help us be more successful with our on-air fundraising. So that was key, and we did that a few months prior, actually in the fall prior to our 2020 spring drive. So we were already in the groove of that kind of cultural shift in the organization, which set us up great for success in the spring. Another thing that we did with Jay Clayton is we did a deep dive into our data to really figure out where the opportunity was in terms of what our average gift should be, how many new donors we wanted to bring in during our pledge drives with each drive. So we established some new metrics, and we also came up with a GEICO statement that we used in every break. And basically that statement was 84% of all of our funding comes from right here in Metro Atlanta. And we felt like that was a really important message to stress during the beginning of the pandemic, to let our listeners know that we really were relying on them. One of the things that was just a challenge for us, to be really honest, is the timing of the drive. We didn't want to come across as insensitive to the circumstances that our entire community, the entire world, everyone was facing at that time. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't pledging right at the height of a spike of COVID cases in our area. So we were really mindful about the best timing of our drive, and we actually delayed it for several weeks. But it just got to a point where we just couldn't delay it anymore, and we decided to go ahead and do our pledge drive. But tactically, we did want to be sensitive, even though we were pledging. So we decided to shorten our pledge breaks. Usually our pledge breaks were around 5-6 minutes. We shortened them to about 3 minutes tops. So that meant that we had to be really tight, really strategic with the use of the time. We really stuck to a break structure. So we, excuse me, we got to our setup really quickly. We stated the goal really quickly. We did our call to action really quickly. We did the case and the close. We followed that 8-part break structure very intentionally within those 3 minutes. The other thing that we were really conscious about was the messaging. We wanted to stress the fact that we really felt that we were providing a service that our listeners really were relying on. Basically, news that you need in order to stay safe, to stay healthy, to keep your family safe and healthy. So we really leaned into that messaging for every break. We also lessened our goal, lowered our goal, because we really just weren't sure exactly what, how this was all going to work out. So just to kind of lessen the stress on the revenue expectations and also on the team, lowered the goal. So next slide. Another tactic that we tried in the spring was a longer pre-drive. Our thought process around that was that if we allowed more time before we started on-air pitching to bring in more revenue and more donors, we wouldn't be so stressed to try and hit our benchmarks during the on-air portion of the drive. So we had a longer pre-drive. Another tactic that we tested out in this drive was to expand our community partnerships. So we had been doing at least 1 or 2 community partnerships in previous drives as a general rule. We would partner with our local food bank and another organization, Trees Atlanta, and those have been really successful for us. But for this particular drive, we really wanted to make sure that the community understood that We were fundraising because we have to, but if we can deepen our service to Metro Atlanta and to the communities that we serve, we wanted to do that at the same time. So we were really strategic around which organizations we wanted to partner with. We focused on services to frontline workers. So organizations like the YMCA, which provided support for families, working families, for after school programs, support for kids who were missing school and needed some enrichment around their schoolwork. We partnered with Giving Kitchen, an organization that serves food service workers, a local healthcare foundation to provide PPE for medical providers and medical workers. So that's kind of how we approached this partnership with community organizations, and we branded it as one community, and that kind of reinforced our theme for this drive. The other thing that turned out to be successful for us, another experiment, is we really leaned into the following and the loyalty of our listeners to our on-air hosts. So, for example, if we had an on-air host who was really focused on food insecurity during COVID, we would have her be the signer on an email, a really heartfelt email from that host that would go out to our full email list, asking us to support us around that partnership with the food bank. So tying the on-air content together with the partnership with the ask in our email appeals. And we did that throughout the drive, and that proved to be a new working approach for us. Another thing that I want to mention is that we, because of just some staffing changes, we really needed to build our bench of on-air pitchers. So we were really mindful also about having diverse voices on our air. We selected folks in the station who expressed interest, but also seemed to just have some natural skills, natural talent for being pitch partners with some of our on-air hosts. So we built up our bench of pitchers during that time as well. We were also thinking about, like, what if somebody got sick? We didn't want to be in a position where we didn't have enough folks to pitch during the drive. So we did that as well. Next slide. So here's just a quick snapshot of the top of our One Community webpage. We made a webpage specifically for the partnership so that our listeners, as we were talking about it during our pledge breaks, our listeners could go and see pictures of some of the folks that we're helping through our One Community campaign and our partnerships with YMCA and other organizations. And another thing I want to point out is that with a couple of our partnerships, we were actually able to get sponsors to cover the cost of the things that we were donating back to the community. So a sponsor to help pay for or cover the cost of what we were giving back to the YMCA or Meals on Wheels or et cetera, Giving Kitchen, et cetera. So there you see, you just saw a picture of some of the food service workers who would benefit from the partnership that we had with Giving Kitchen. All right, so what were the results? It worked. We weren't sure, it was a little bit of a nail biter, but we did surpass our goal, which we were all really happy about. We brought in more than 2,000 donations during our One Community partnerships, which was a note to us that people really did like the partnerships, and we should continue to do that. The email campaigns that we connected with content and our on-air hosts, that was really effective. We were actually kind of surprised by how strong the results were for those email campaigns. So that was a great takeaway for us. And another thing that we did during this drive was we started to send out emails that weren't really newsletters about our content, and they weren't really appeals. We really thought of them as a service to our listeners and to our members. We highlighted content that we thought that they really want to hear about, like our podcast, Did You Wash Your Hands, about staying safe during COVID, or resources for parents who are homeschooling and making sure that they knew about some of the resources available for tutoring and help with schoolwork at home. So we called these resource emails or awareness emails that we started to send out on Saturday mornings. Just as a highlight, with a really soft ask. I mean, they barely even had an ask, mostly just a nice short note from us and a donate button. And that was bringing in revenue as well. So something that we discovered was a good tactic for us. Now, I'm going to hand it over to Emily Pelton. She's going to give us highlights of our year-end campaign.
Thank you, Aishah. I just want to say Aishah was our leader through all of this and really our chief strategist, and we couldn't have achieved those results without her. And we learned so much in that spring campaign. We didn't have time today, but we carried a lot of those tactics through to our fall campaign, which was very successful as well and exceeded goals. And then we came to our year-end campaign, which is something that hasn't really been an emphasis for us in the past. It's something that we've done kind of, for a couple of days at the end of the year. But this year we decided to really take, again, Jay Clayton's advice and really look at when we were pitching, whether we were maximizing our opportunities with funders or with members rather, who many of whom give in December. So we decided to make a more robust campaign out of our year-end on-air pitch. And so we set a goal of $175,000, which was reflecting the fact that we were putting more into it than last year. We wanted to really focus on donor acquisition less than gift size. And we tested out a more serious engagement with Giving Tuesday, which in Georgia is a broad campaign for nonprofits to be generous right after Thanksgiving. And we wanted to make sure that we were sustaining and carrying that through line of engagement with the communities to our members, to make sure that they knew we were still committed to that. And so we brought forward one of our longtime community partners into the campaign. So we looked at some national data to choose the length of our drive. We really leaned into reminding people, hopefully, the value of what they had received from us throughout this crazy year of 2020. And we really dug into different ways of engaging younger members and people who perhaps were listening to us but maybe hadn't engaged before through Giving Tuesday, including several tactics, including texting, which was great, which CBA helped us do, and that was really successful. And then throughout December, it felt like kind of a lot to us, but we did a lot of radio spots, and then we really pushed hard and did a mini match campaign the last 2 days of the year, which was incredibly successful. I think we brought in $50,000 just in 2 days. That was a big surprise. So there's a lot here that we're still coming through to understand why did it work quite as well as it did. Of course, we're pleased with the results, but we raised $458,000 against our goal of $175,000. That was, stunning. I think some of that was the kind of year we were having and says a lot about our membership base and says a lot about the quality of our programming this year and people's loyalty to us at a difficult time. But we did see a very large number of gifts. We had good acquisition results out of that, and Giving Tuesday is definitely something we'll do and actually dig more into next year. And we just continue to see that enthusiasm among Atlantans for the community partnerships by the size of the giving to the food bank. So we were really pleased with these outcomes. We're still trying to figure them out, but I think that a lot of things that we adapted to in spring, where we really were trying to look at our pledge drives from the perspective of our listeners and to think about how the pandemic was affecting us and what we would want to hear, and to really learn from our tests and our innovations. It's really changed the way that we do pledge, and we'll see in 2021 how much of this sustains, but our model has changed a whole lot through all this innovation. And so we're glad that we took those risks. I again want to congratulate Aishah, who really led us through this, but it was very strong intra-station collaboration that also got us there. And so we're grateful that everybody really got behind fundraising and got behind pledge in a big way this year. Everyone knew how much it mattered. So we're grateful to the community, and we're happy to share these results.
All right, thanks everybody for your presentations. They were excellent. So let's have some dialogue about what you talked about. What did you learn and now you know you would not do that again? Allie, can we start with you?
So I will say I don't think there's anything that we would not have done. You know, the tip jar micro donations was not a success. Like in retrospect, I have a lot of ideas for how we could have done the design and user experience better. But one of the core ideas behind table stakes is design do, which is exactly what it sounds like. You design it and you do it, and you don't wait for perfection. You just do things and try them. You test it, try it, measure how it performed, and take those learnings to either refine and move forward or move on to the next thing. Not to get hung up on making things perfect, just try it and see if it hits. So I think that was actually a really valuable lesson for us. We are trying to be less risk averse and more open to experimentation. So, you know, we learned something, we've identified how we want to move forward with a similar idea. And again, we will be testing that, trying that, designing and doing.
Okay, I like that. Accepting whatever comes and learning from it. Emily and Aishah, any thoughts about what you learned and that you wouldn't do it again so others could maybe learn from that?
Emily, do you want to go first? I got a couple of thoughts.
Yeah, sure. I think there's, I would say similar to Allie, there's not a lot that we wouldn't do because we just continued to build on our learnings through the year and we had such a strong year-end result. However, I think we had plenty of reflections and we did do an after-action review to look at some ways that we can improve. And we had a little bit of a gap in marketing capacity. And now that we have somebody on board who can really help us with doing a much stronger job with the segmentation of our digital campaigns, that needs a lot of work. We know that our open rates started to really fall at the very end of the year. And so we saw that, you know, we probably needed to get smarter about who we were communicating with and how. And so I think we're moving in that direction. And we're also changing our email provider, our email marketing provider, into a tool that we think is more built for purpose for the way that our station actually uses that tool. So there are definitely some improvements that we need to make. And a lot of it is around that. I would say that we have a great process. Aishah and Dave Bereswain, whom Aishah just mentioned, they lead that together, and there's weekly, and then during Drive, there's a daily meeting so that content and fundraising are sitting down together and talking through the difficult issues. I think that really, really helps us. But COVID also made it harder to get the station buy-in. I think before I came to the station, which was really right around when COVID started, there was a lot more sort of bringing the whole station together for lunch and, you know, getting everybody excited about Pledge and creating community around it that was harder to do online. So I'm not sure that's something we wouldn't, it's almost like something we would do again as soon as we can all, you know, get together and generate that energy so that everybody in the whole building feels like they're part of that success when it happens.
And can I ask you an additional question? If you could pick one tip for the audience that is about engaging your staff in a virtual world that we're all living in right now, what would your one thing be?
I think it would be happy hour. Because we don't have, you know, as Emily said, we don't have opportunities to get together for lunch or chit chat in the hallway. Like, we just don't see each other to kind of build rapport with each other. And you hear it on the air when there's not a connection or a rapport between the two people who are pitching, 2 or 3, however many people you have pitching. So, like, we still need ways to stay connected with each other and keep those relationships warm so that when we get on the air, we do sound like we're friends and we know each other. So we've been Emily's been hosting some happy hours for our department, but I think having ways that, you know, that are just kind of casual where staff can stay connected with each other and check in on each other, I think is really important.
Okay, great. Ladies, I have 2 more core questions for you, and then we'll open it up to Q&A for the audience. So Allie, I want to turn it over to you because when we were talking about this presentation, I think you had a really interesting perspective on the next question. So the question is, as you approach this project, how did you reconsider membership and/or your metrics for success?
Well, so there were a couple different ways. One way was, with the micro donations, we were kind of reconsidering how we want to think about membership. And one of the reasons for that is that part of the table stakes process is we did a training through the Maynard Institute called Fault Lines, which is essentially a framework for understanding intersectionality, especially as it pertains to your audience. And our coaches frequently challenged us throughout the process. Okay, how does this intersect with your fault lines? How does this play into class, geography, gender, sexuality, all of these different core pieces? So with the tip jar, that's something that we were really looking at is a generation, thinking, younger generations that we want to cultivate might not have as much financial capacity. And for older generations as well, we hear from a lot of older people who are like, I give my annual donation, but that's all I can give. Or I donated a car last year, I can't afford to give this year. And, understanding that, we look at $60 a year as a low-level, entry-level donation, but that for many people, that is a significant financial investment, and really trying to consider how we can reconsider family outside of that very monetary basis. We're still not there, I think, but I think we're very much like open to those ideas of what constitutes family. Metrics for success, I think that's really interesting because as part of the membership department, we obviously have a lot of metrics that we measure and a staggering number of goals and mini goals, but that is not true of many departments within our organization. They do not have defined KPIs, and that's how we ended up with things like 5 newsletters that nobody was subscribed to. And so as now we are actually, this is maybe a whole different thing, but we're actually taking table stakes internal. We are conducting 3 teams that are working on improving our internal culture through the lens of one team. My team is focusing on communications. Another one is focusing on fiscal literacy and fiscal opportunities. And another one is focusing on DEI. So with my group, communications, one of the goals that we have is to push departments within the organization to define what success looks like for their area, to share their strategic plans, and for individuals to know what success looks like for their areas, for their jobs, for their projects.
I really like that because it sounds like you're breaking down silos, and that flow of communication between departments can't be bad. It can only be good. So Emily and Aishah, so how did the structure of projects that you're going to do in the future change? And I think this core question to both of the stations is, what did you know before? What did you learn? How are you changing everything in the future? How are you reconsidering your processes?
Well, I'd say everything that we experimented with and tested out in the spring and the fall and year-end drives has really become our new approach to honor fundraising. It's our new normal. So the longer pre-drives, shorter pitch breaks, asking our honor hosts to allow us to send emails on their behalf over their signature written from them. They actually help us write the emails that we send out to our members and prospects. The community partnerships, donor-centered strategy, all of that has worked really well for us. So we're going to continue to do all of that. Emily, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, I think that's right. And I think we were fortunate. It was I think if you contrast our presentation of this now, where we're able to sort of say these things went well for us, we're happy with the outcomes. But, last March, I mean, we really were having some pretty heated internal debates about whether we should even have a drive at all. And how was the community going to feel? And we didn't know. And it was really a scary time for us because we knew we needed one more drive in order to make our financial goals for the fiscal year. So there was a lot of stress that was there. But I think that the other thing besides all these tactics that we've adapted and tested and we're realizing our membership likes I think what we did also is we took a lot of risks, and even some of the little tactics we tried at the end of the year with Giving Tuesday and other little things that we did along the way. There were some really interesting things we didn't talk about today, but some great premiums that we had in our fall drive that did incredibly well, that just seemed to like capture the moment of how people were feeling. I think all that risk taking was important. And I think what COVID forced us to do was to kind of say, okay, we've had this established model that we've been sort of going along with for years and years, and now we're throwing out the playbook. And I think what we have to be careful about as we go into 2021 is that we continue to be willing to take risks, that we don't just say, okay, we found a better model, let's just do that. We have to keep being willing to try new things. And I think I really appreciated a lot of what Allie was talking about, and I know I want to call her later about some of this training, but how to get that cross station buy-in around a collaboration. I think we can still have more work to do there, and thinking more deeply about how to reach diverse audiences. That's really, I think, a strategic goal that we're setting out for ourselves, taking that seriously and saying, how are we serving the whole community? And what is the whole community? And how do we represent that in our programming, in our membership drive, in our emails, in our newsletters? How do we let everybody in Atlanta know that we care about all of the different communities that we have here, which are many, and that is that's a big thing to take on, that feels great and important, but it's there's a lot of things to figure out there. We don't know exactly the right way to get to that goal. So we still have a lot of work ahead of us if we're going to be if we're going to be comprehensively meeting the needs of this community. So I think this last year opened up so many possibilities, but I think that there is a lot more ahead, that we have to be willing to take risks to to bring ourselves to the next level.
I really like that, and I think the summary is, and we should have probably called this session "Throwing Out the Playbook." Everything you knew is gone, and that relates to the last question that I have for you, ladies, and I just wanted to say, assuming that 2020 was an anomaly, what did you learn from the events or projects that you'll use in a year that isn't so crazy? So let's say 2022 is not so crazy. What did you learn from 2020 that you can apply? And I think we've talked about this a little bit, and I think, Emily, you touched on that. But if you could just pick one last little thing, I'm curious. Allie, want to go first?
Sure. So what I would actually say is that this project kind of set us up for 2020 because the whole world went digital. I mean, it was something that everybody was kind of experiencing slowly. Stations were, still, we were all doing digital things, but maybe weren't looking at digital first strategies. We were maybe trying to be platform agnostic rather than platform specific. But I think that this really laid the groundwork for some of the really explosive success that we had in some of the areas that I actually didn't cover in my presentation. One of the big ones that one of our major goals was actually to retain website users. So looking at return users and loyal users being defined as people who visit our site 3 or more times a month. We had 300% growth in loyal users over the course of the pandemic. And yes, a lot of that is attributable to the fact that the news cycle was absolutely bananas, like at all times. But we were able to capitalize on that. We adapted, we developed a series of live blogs that brought people back constantly. We created more and more of these touch point things like our newsletters that were created really to serve the needs of the pandemic, but that can live on afterwards. So the newsletter that I do, which is about streaming video content, that came about really suddenly, just spur of the moment. I was just like, I'm going to start sending emails about the streaming video options that we have. And then I turned it into a weekly newsletter. And, the idea was, how can we entertain people while they're home, stuck at home? But again, like, that's a really great opportunity for a weekly touch point. and also to let people connect with our streaming video content and to promote that platform. So we did a lot that really put us in position to adapt to 2020, and hopefully we'll see what happens. Again, like I said, we've really taken this outcome-driven approach to heart, and it was really transformative. And also this idea of these cross-functional teams. Before the project that we were in, a lot of us had never worked together before. I'd never spoken to one of the women that was on my team before. So really taking people's different skills to bring a cohesive idea of what digital loyalty means, and getting together to figure out what to do about that. Like I said, we've created another group with around the Passport user group that is similar. It's a cross-functional team made up of people from programming, people from membership that don't work together, but to harness that as like a brain trust to get things moving. Really trying to develop smaller scale ownership of projects that needs less hierarchy, where you don't have to necessarily run everything up the food chain, but where your group is trusted to make decisions and move. And I think that's helping us to be more agile and to move forward. And again, maybe post-pandemic, all of those things are going to serve us really, really well in the future, I hope. We still have our struggles. I mean, the reason that we have this communications team for our table stakes is because our internal communications are not great. And the pandemic has made them considerably worse. So, it has increased the siloization. So those are things that, we're really struggling with. But putting this attention to these problems at kind of the nadir, we're probably at the point that internal communications, they couldn't be worse because we are, separated. And, if your work doesn't intersect with someone, you may never see them in the same way that you would if you're walking around the office. So really putting focus on these issues and driving that forward, that'll only improve things once we're able to actually see each other in person again.
Okay.
Mine, I'm gonna say something which is really simple, but I think it's just so important. It's just measurement. Mm-hmm. Before we start testing new strategies and tactics, we want to make sure that we have the unique URL for it, the unique source code, that everything in our CRM is set so that when we capture the responses, that we can go back and really determine, did it really work? How did our results in this drive compare to the previous drive or compare to the previous fiscal year? So that we don't fall back into the habit of just winging it and just doing what feels right to us, but we don't necessarily know for sure if it works. I think having more rigor around measurement and tracking our results is really working for our team and our strategic planning and all of that. So that's something definitely that I'm gonna be making sure that our team sticks with that. If it's the one thing I do, that's really important to me, is the measurement, because I think that's an extension of the cultural shift that happened with our training, is having everybody engaged and involved and understanding why we're doing what we're doing, and that data helps us explain, this is why we're doing community partnerships, they work. This is why we're doing shorter pitch breaks, they work. The data shows that. So just sticking with that measurement. And then the other things, of course, are just kind of tried and true stuff that as we're doing lots of testing and innovation, there's some things that we know just absolutely work all the time. Donor-centered messaging, it just always works, but not just in the messaging, but also the incentives, the thank you gifts, all the things that we're offering to the listeners. We want to make sure that it's something that's relevant to them, that they care about, that's useful for them. And sticking with our break structure. Having a setup, a case statement, a goal, an incentive, a close, and getting out, finishing it up, just really sticking with that structure because we know it works.
Yeah. And I agree with all of that. I would just add one other thing that it's been a phrase that we use a lot now when we're talking about pledge, which is pulling all the levers, and realizing that when we have a strong digital message from a host and we have something interesting happening on some of our programming that aligns to the kind of community partnership offer that we're making that aligns to some of the messaging that's going on air. You know, when we really stack all that stuff up, and we get a message going on all of the channels we have to operate, that's when we start to have really good pledge days, because we've really focused our listenership on, you know, what we want them to hear. And, you know, if it motivates and touches them, hopefully we reach them on some channel that day. And I think getting much more intentional about, okay, you know, can we build a spot in here, or can we get an email out there? And we usually have a great big game plan, but can we tweak it to make sure that we're really stacking up all the opportunities for the message to get out? And I think that our team, and not just the fundraisers, but everybody has gotten internalized the idea of the importance of that, and different people will bring forward opportunities and ideas about how to do that. So the more that we're all kind of thinking the same way, to kind of row in unison, you know, I think that that's made a big difference this year. And I think it also just, it helps with team cohesion and a sense of esprit de corps, that we're all, you know, we're on this mission together. And I think that that really helps, you know, because pledge is exhausting, as everybody watching will know. And so you've got to figure out, okay, what's going to be, you know, what are those small wins, and what are the motivations, and what are the successes and the contributions people can feel to keep them going through, you know, a long period of time where we're all working hard, especially the people pitching on air.
Sure. Good. Great. Well, ladies, this is wonderful, and I know the audience has a ton of questions, so let's do some live Q&A. Hi, everyone. That was a pre-recorded session that we did about a week or two ago, and I will just say that we have a ton of questions. So as the ladies are turning on their webcams and coming up, I can see all of you. You look great. Everything is wonderful. So we're good to go. We have a ton of questions, and I want to let you know in advance that we may have to get back to some of you by email, but with the 13 minutes we have left in this session, let me go ahead and jump in. So, Allie, I have a question for you from the audience. They would like to know if you could share more about collecting interest data, and if you could keep your answer just brief for now.
Yeah, so you know, we did have a little bit of interest data via our database, but not a whole lot. I've really been accumulating things through engagement. So for example, when we were launching one of our new newsletters, I was looking for people who had a consistent pattern of engagement with our news content. So, you know, I'm developing through that by looking at the emails that people open, the ones that they click through, and developing some smaller action-based groups around that, but then also kind of taking those and then bundling them in over time as I see more demonstrated interest.
Okay, great. So let's go on to another question for the gals in Atlanta, my neighbors in Atlanta, all of us here together. Can you talk a little bit, Emily and Aishah, about what did the One Community partnerships look like, and what did they do?
Sure. So when we first tested out, well, first know that before we did One Community, we were doing at least one partnership in every radio pledge drive as just a general rule. That's just kind of part of the culture of WABE. So in the fall, we would do a partnership with Atlanta Community Food Bank, kind of pre-Thanksgiving, and then the springtime, we would do a partnership with Trees Atlanta. So that was our norm. So One Community was really just us expanding and building on a model that we were already using. And so our thought was every day of the on-air pledge drive, we would have a specific partnership. And Emily actually did the work to reach out to the community partners to establish those partnerships. So if you want to talk about how they were set up, and then I could talk about how we presented them on air.
Sure. Well, actually, it was really exciting because, you know, first of all, what an opportunity to sort of, you know, innovate and reach out to, you know, to other important organizations that we could see were really responding to COVID in a very direct way. So we wanted to support them. Everyone that we reached out to said yes. They were excited, and I think it was interesting with Giving Kitchen in particular, who is continuing to provide really vital services to frontline restaurant workers who've been displaced, trying to get new jobs and manage through this time. They were very excited to have the recognition on air, but they were really trying to expand their services dramatically and make sure that people, even in the outlying areas of Atlanta who probably wouldn't have heard of them, would know that there's an organization out there that they could reach out to. So they were actually trying to attract more clients, trying to serve more people, trying to make people aware that they're there to support them. So they felt that this was a great opportunity to expand their services. So we were glad to be part of that. So I think, you know, we also were sensitive at the time that a lot of things that we might normally be marketing, a fancy trip or other kinds of things that would normally be in the lineup, just were going to be very tone deaf. And so we started to think about, okay, what can we provide as an incentive or a message, or how do we let the community know that we are with them? So this was just kind of a natural way to do it. And I've worked in a whole lot of nonprofits around Atlanta. So it was a lot of fun to call up people and just ideate with them. But everybody was pretty clear about what they had as their priority items, what they wanted to present as their message. And so we just worked with them to put that together very quickly. And so it was much easier than you might have guessed to pull together 6 community partnerships in about 3 weeks. And Aishah, do you want to talk about the on-air piece?
Yeah, just really one really important thing about the on-air piece is that the partnership needs to be something simple enough that you can say it in one sentence, because our pitch breaks are only 3 minutes long. And if it gets too complicated and too convoluted, the listener is just going to get confused. So keep it simple. Your one donation equals 1 tree planted, or your one donation equals X amount of food will be donated to the community, or will feed X number of people. Like, keep it simple. That is the key.
I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, we have a question for Allie. Allie, someone is asking about the personality development. So they said, it sounds like developing a personality for newsletters and email messaging really works. How did you mine existing resources or staff to make this happen? Often staff don't want to take on more. What are your thoughts?
That's true. You know, I took on this newsletter and I don't think at the time I fully realized what I was committing to. You know, every Friday morning I have a bit of a panic when I realize, oh my gosh, I have to write this newsletter. But yeah, I think it's really a matter of priorities. For news, you know, they were unbelievably overwhelmed this year. I'm sure you can imagine, especially the web team. You know, they were going a mile a minute, every minute of every day over the course of this news cycle. But they really, even amidst all of that, they really decided that it was important for them to commit to pushing their content in a different way, and trying to kind of, again, meet the rhythms that people need in a different way. So we have like our daily newsletters that are kind of an average roundup. You know, they just kind of pull links from our website. But this one is written by Chris Underwood, who's our web producer. And, you know, they really did have to shift a lot of resources. And I know that it's tough on them to get this out every week. It's a big thing. And, you know, the whole team contributes. I won't lie to you, it's tough. With our other newsletter that we worked on, KPBS Arts, that was actually quite a bit easier because we had just hired our new arts editor, or arts and culture reporter, and she baked that into her job from the start. So that, in that case, that was a lot easier. You know, she was brand new, coming in, creating the job for herself. But yeah, I mean, I won't lie to you, it's tough, and it's a commitment.
Okay, you know, I think it's really good to know the good and the tough. So thanks, Allie, for vocalizing that. Let's do a couple of really quick questions for Aishah and Emily. Who wrote the email copy that you sent from the hosts?
So the staff wrote a first draft of the copy. gave it to the host to let them personalize it. We learned very quickly that the more personal the message from the host, the more personal it sounded, the better the response. We had one email that went out like on a Saturday, Emily, and we were blown away by how much money we never made that. It was like 4 times better open rate revenue than like any other time. The host, let me just qualify that. The host is extremely popular. The host is known for her public affairs show, which really focuses on all of the most pressing issues of the day here in Atlanta. So it made total sense for her to author an email about food insecurity because she was already focused on that issue in her show. And she speaks very passionately about that in her show, but she did so in the email as well. And we had the email come from her. She was the sender. She signed it, all of that. So having that buy-in from our on-air host really helped. And then I'll just mention how we got there. First of all, the host really wanted to help. As Emily said, we had a cultural shift in the organization and everybody bought into Pledge. But we did bribe them a little bit with some swag. We had some new thank you gifts that weren't even like available yet. And so I promised them they'd be the first to get them. But what we did with that is we had them take selfies with the swag so that we could use that in social media to promote the thank you gifts. So it was always an exchange with the host. But we tried to make it something that, you know, they'd want to do for a few different reasons.
Okay. Emily, did you have something?
I was just going to add, you know, each host was different. Some hosts were pretty happy to take our draft and put their own spin on it. And then other hosts really wanted to, you know, had something to say and had their own narrative that really ended up being that they wrote most of the copy. And we were happy either way. It was nice to, because I think we all at some point are writing in a certain kind of a markety way. You know, some of the things the host had to say were a little more penetrating, a little more real, a little bit more getting to the heart of things. And I think people actually liked that. So it was good to take it out of the fundraising world a little bit and have other people contribute to the messaging so that we were changing it up, but also to just add that really punctuation mark of authenticity. I think that particular email, it just hit people very hard. It was very moving.
Okay, and the one final question is, Allie, could you explain just one more time or a very brief description, the subgroups that you had that had the authority to move forward with projects? Could you talk just briefly about that?
Yeah, so this is actually one of the core concepts of the table stakes program is this notion of mini GM, which is where you really kind of authorize groups to just take on projects and move forward with them. The ones that we have currently, one that I mentioned that isn't part of our internal table stakes, but that was came up kind of organically through this process, is our Passport users group, which is the one that really focuses on streaming video. The other ones are communications, so that's focusing on our internal communications, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and fiscal opportunities, which is also kind of focusing on fiscal literacy among staff. And all of those are really around internal culture rather than anything that we're putting out externally. I mean, you know, there, of course, we can only hope that improving our internal culture will improve our outfit. But yeah, that's what we're really working on right now.
Okay, I loved that one. Well, everyone, that's it. And I want to thank you all so much for pre-recording this session, for being a part of this. We are going to send this recording out. I know there were a lot more questions. The ladies have agreed to release their email addresses so that you may reach out to them for more information. They would love to talk to you. I also wanted to say, please join us back here at 1:30 Eastern Time. Deb Ashmore is going to be doing one of her State of the Systems. I have seen a preview. It is brilliant. We have enjoyed spending time with all of you. Thank you again for your participation and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.